What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the German Bear Podcast. And today we got the first episode of the 2023 Chicago Bears Draft Prospect Series on the channel. And today we want to start it off with a banger and look at 5 wide receiver prospects that the Chicago Bears should consider in this upcoming draft. And as I said, it's all about the wide receivers today in this draft prospect series. Overall, we want to take a look at needs for the Chicago Bears heading into the offseason and into the upcoming draft, and just take a look at a couple of prospects that I found really interesting, players that I liked a lot watching. And we're just going to talk a little bit of football here, talk about draft prospects. NFL draft, always one of the most fun times of the entire NFL offseason and the NFL season overall, because the season never ends. And for me, at least personally. And yeah, super excited for today's episode. We got players that range from top 5 players in the entire draft all the way back to around the 4th or 5th round, depending on how teams see those players. And yeah, without further ado, super excited for today's episode. And let's get right into it and start off with an absolute banger with Malik Neighbors. And Malik Neighbors is a very, very interesting player that I absolutely fell in love with while watching his tape. The 6-foot wide receiver out of LSU had an amazing 2023 campaign, and he's just a phenomenal player. Let's just get right into the analysis of what he could bring and what he does so well already as an NFL prospect. And first and foremost, he has really good zone understanding. He's a very patient player, very smooth into the openings of the zone. He finds the green constantly, and that's something you obviously want against zone coverage. He doesn't rush it, and he always finds a soft spot. Then one of his biggest strengths is definitely yards after the catch. He breaks tackles consistently. He has so much speed and burst. He can make people miss. You definitely want to get the ball to Malik Neighbors' hands. Also, very smooth hands. Speaking of his hands, looks effortless the way he catches the football, and he doesn't shy away from just hauling in everything that flies his way. Also, contested or uncontested catches. As I already mentioned as well, speed kills. Absolutely the most explosive player in this year's draft. He takes the top of every single defense he played against, and in combination with that, he had great hand-eye coordination. So for those deep balls, he can easily track those in without much effort. So that was really impressive to see. He wins one-on-one jump balls as well, not as consistently as the second guy on the list today, but he does a really good job at it too. He doesn't shy away from those situations either. He's a safety valve, which means he's excellent for quick hitters for either Justin Fields or young rookie quarterback if the Bears decide to actually draft Caleb Williams in this upcoming draft. Very versatile player. He can play in the slot and outside. He did that. He also got a lot of reverses, so he was used in multiple ways at LSU. And he always, which is so important for wide receivers, shows late hands. That's something you have to do in order for the DB to not know when the ball is actually coming your way, and he does that with perfection. Always in the last millisecond, he shows his hands. And then one specific play I want to get into was against Mississippi State, where he was running a stop and go route. Whoever saw the Mississippi State tape probably saw that play too. I mean, nasty snap down at the top of that stop, where he really wants to sell the hitch or the curl on that play. It was rather a curl, where he really wants to sell that curl on that play. Has really low hip level here, which was absolutely elite. Just the way he snapped down so quickly and then re-accelerates with his killer speed. Got wide open, made the DB jump the curl route on that play. Just a crazy route, perfect execution, and that's just an all-in-all great play to showcase Malik Neighbors' skills here. But yeah, one heck of a player. Is he probably available at number 9? I don't think so. He could easily go in the top 5 because he's such a special talent. I don't think he's that far away from Marvin Harrison Jr., if even at all. He's a phenomenal player, and if the Bears decide to go with Caleb Williams with the 1st overall pick, we can only hope that Malik Neighbors is available at number 9, but it could be a possibility. You never know, great players slip in the draft, and he would be a great option for the Chicago Bears, a player that can do stuff after the catch. It's very DJ Moore-esque, but it's not the exactly same player. He has more speed to him, and he can take the top of the defense even more, so it would not be the case that you have two DJ Moores then, which wouldn't be bad, by the way, but I think it's a player that also complements DJ Moore very well. So Malik Neighbors, definitely an absolute banger player in this upcoming draft. And with that, we want to move on to the second guy that we want to talk about today, who's also, in my opinion, a player that could easily go in the top 5 of this year's draft, depending on how you see it, with Rome Odunze out of Washington. And Odunze is another player I fell in love with watching his tape. He's a 6'3", 215-pound wide receiver. As I said, out of Washington, had a phenomenal year with Michael Penix there. Went to the national championship game, obviously, and he's a different type of player than Malik Neighbors. So in this year's draft, it's really about, especially with the top 3 wide receivers in this year's draft, about picking flavors and what you like more out of a player and which skill set you want to see on your offense. But Rome Odunze is a guy that would perfectly fit into the Bears offense as well, next to DJ Moore. I mean, getting into his strengths, he has amazing elite body control. He puts his body always in the superior position against the defensive back, and in combination with that, he has just gluey hands. Like, it seems like he has glue attached to his hands. He catches everything. He can high point the football, very athletic player, and is also very aggressive to the ball. Like, he wants to win every situation, every contested catch. He aggressively goes to the football. He attacks it. That's what you love to see on tape. Also, very smooth mover, just like Malik Neighbors here. Very smooth getting into the zones and finding the soft spot. Not as fast as him, obviously, but he's still a very smooth mover. And also, his 50-50 ball situations, they are 70-30 ball situations. I mean, Rome Odunze, when you watch his tape, he mostly wins those deep balls, those jump ball situations. He just knows how to win those, and it turns into 70-30 balls, which is so impressive to see. And he can fight for some yards too. He's not a Malik Neighbors after the catch by any means, but he showed some good stuff with the ball in his hands too. And he's a sick blocker, guys. I mean, when you watch his tape, there was one play, I don't know against who it was, but he literally, from the far hash all the way to the opposite sideline, blocked the DB out of bounds to the ground. It just shows his competitiveness, that he cares for his teammates, and that he gives it his all on the football field. Crazy work there too as a blocker, and overall he's just a different type of receiver, as I said, but would be a complementary outside typical X wide receiver for the Chicago Bears that would upgrade the offense immediately. And he could also be there at 9. He could also not be there at 9. I think one of the two guys, Neighbors or Odunze, could drop to the number 9 spot. The Bears must be getting a little bit lucky, but also if one of those guys is still available at 6, 7, 8, you could think about a trade up as well, because those are special wide receivers. Both of them would have gone easily as the first wide receivers in last year's draft, and I'm really excited for those players coming out of the draft. Now, with that being said, we want to actually move on to another guy that is not necessarily a top 5 wide receiver, but a fringe first round, early second round wide receiver that the Chicago Bears could target if they get a trade going for Justin Fields and maybe get a earlier second round pick in this year's draft, and that is Adonai Mitchell. Adonai Mitchell is a very intriguing player out of Texas. He's a 6'4" wide receiver, even taller than Rome Odunze, but not as heavy, not as big of a frame guy. But he still has a typical X wide receiver frame that is just a special talent. Adonai Mitchell, that didn't receive the most targets at Texas, still had a very productive season. And getting to his strengths, I mean, excellent quickness and speed for his size. I think he's a very special player that has special talents, and at 6'4", he really moves well, and also is a very polished route runner for his size. You see it against Bama. He did some great setups on his routes, selling fades or in cuts to set up his following move, and he just destroyed the Bama corners, who both are probably first-round picks in this year's draft. So crazy to see that production against actually elite competition. Now, what's even more impressive about him is his incredible catch radius. He has super long arms and a big frame. He can haul in everything from crazy angles. He did that in the college football playoffs against Washington too, where he had a beautiful touchdown snag where he just basically was hanging in the air for 2 seconds and just caught that ball. It looked like he was floating in the air and still extended his hands, and the catch radius was insane. Also, getting into the hands, great hands too, always attacks the ball just like Rome Odunze. He works back to the football on curls, good zone understanding, moves very smooth as well. And the only thing that is probably the difference maker than the other guys right now is that he's not the flashiest after the catch at all. He does have problem getting up the field quickly, and some scouts also think that he took some plays off and was not as competitive as the other guys, but I didn't see that all the time. It was also depending game to game. He was also a solid blocker, not the best. That was also dependent on each and every game, but Adonai Mitchell is a guy that could very easily go in the 20s to 30s of the first round in this year's draft. So the Chiefs, who still need a really good receiver, could snag an Adonai Mitchell late in this draft, but he could also fall into the second round for a couple of picks because, as I said, players can always slip in the draft. So it's a possibility that he is available in the second round because it's a very deep draft class, and also those fringe first, second round wide receivers are coming in bunches this year. So Adonai Mitchell, very intriguing player, very much fun to watch on tape, and he would be a great addition also next to DJ Moore, would be an instant starter for the Chicago Bears. As we now want to move on to the fourth guy on today's list, who is a guy that he's not on everybody's list at the moment, but we want to talk about now a guy that I'm very intrigued by, which is Jamari Thrash. Jamari Thrash was the most productive player for Louisville last year and is a player that might be not the flashiest guy on the football field, but he's a guy that I would certainly love to see on the Chicago Bears roster, and he's a guy that probably will easily go in the top 100 picks in this upcoming draft, maybe late second round into the third round, into that range. And getting into his strengths and weaknesses a little bit, first of all, very good route polish for a college wide receiver. He sets up his routes with incredible foot fire and quickness. Like, he's not the fastest guy. You will see that on tape. He won't win that much deep, but he has really good footwork and quickness off the line, and he's very thoughtful with his routes too. He's not rushing it. He knows how to set things up. He had good timing with his quarterback there at Louisville, so really impressive for a young player the way he ran his routes. Also, very much the ability to snap down and change direction in a hurry. He can really stop on a dime, which is so important to win those curl routes. Obviously, also timing based, but also he needs to win those routes with his snap down. Good zone understanding, finds the green, very smooth, just like the other guys in today's list. And he's also very much dangerous with the ball in his hands, had multiple plays where he got the ball quickly and made people miss, showed off his quickness, and just moved up the field and got some yards after the catch. So I think he's really much a very good yak receiver that you could have in this year's draft class, as good as it gets. He uses different gears to manipulate defenders too, and works back to the football, which is always obviously important, attacking the football, being aggressive with it. As for some cons with this game so far, he does too much at times on his routes. I mean, as I said, he has incredible foot fire and quickness, but the timing is key in the NFL too, and he will not have that much time in the NFL than in college, so he needs to find a balance between what he wants to do with his routes at the beginning, with his release, and then later on to not waste any movements in the NFL. Also, he's more of a body catcher. He doesn't catch the ball with his hands extended all the time. He tends to body catch a little bit more, and he won't wow you with one-on-one contested catches, and with his speed, he won't win deep that much. But overall, he's a great complementary player for an offense that could start right away. Very polished player that probably will be a Z receiver in the league. And as I said, really good route runner. He has the things to succeed early in the NFL, and he can be an early on impact player that can make some plays happen after the catch. So really excited for Jamari Thrash and where he could go in this year's draft. But I really liked his tape, and he would be a great addition to the Chicago Bears. And with that being said, we're already moving on to the last player that we want to talk about today, the fifth player on today's list. But it's surefire a great player that I'm super excited about, and he already played with Caleb Williams, and I'm talking about Taj Washington out of USC. The 5'9", 177-pound wide receiver for USC last year was a player that caught my eye while watching actually Caleb Williams' tape and just studying him as a player. And I knew going into that tape that Brendan Rice was a pretty good wide receiver that Caleb Williams had to work with. But while watching the tape, I was not too impressed by Brendan Rice and his skill set. But there was one guy that was consistently pop off tape. It was number 16 for USC. And I was checking just the PFF mock draft simulator, and I didn't find another USC wide receiver in the entire list. And I was super confused who that guy was. I thought it was maybe a sophomore, whatever. And then the Shrine Bowl came around, and there was one USC wide receiver listed, and it was Taj Washington. And I looked up Taj Washington's name, and it was number 16 on USC. And he caught my eye consistently while watching. Caleb Williams made so many great catches and explosive plays. And then he also later on was listed on the PFF Mock Draft Simulator, and more people got to talk about him because he had such an excellent Shrine Bowl week. And Taj Washington is just a player I absolutely want on the Chicago Bears. He's a player that might go top 100, but easily could fall out of the top 100 as well because of his frame. Right now, he's probably a 4th round pick. He could also be a later 4th round pick. And with his 5'9", 177 frame, that's obviously his big minus. He's not the biggest wide receiver, and obviously there is some concerns with that every single season. But aside from that, I just absolutely love Taj Washington, especially if you draft Caleb Williams, because you give him a weapon that he already knows and knows how to use. And for his strengths, I mean, first and foremost, I think that's expected with him. Quickness and foot fire. Taj Washington is an explosive weapon that can make some things happen. Also takes the top of a defense easily. He's not just quick, he's also super fast. He can run by you. He can stop on a dime. I mean, he just does excellent with those things. And then as soon as the ball is actually in his hands, he will make some things happen. He's just like Jamari Thrash a little bit. Amazing yak threat. Dang good with the ball in his hands and just making people miss, and also just lowering his shoulder for his smaller frame as well. In addition to that, also plays with a second gear, meaning he can set you up with his first gear on a route and then just explodes into a second gear and runs away from you. And then he also has very good hands. I didn't see a lot of issues where he was dropping the football. He was consistently getting the ball, was just a safety blanket for Caleb Williams on certain routes, and he was just a very impressive player that popped in my eye without even knowing who he was. So I think that's always something good on tape when he just pops off and you see a special player. And yeah, Taj Washington, definitely one of the more intriguing later round wide receivers available in this upcoming draft. And with that being said, guys, that's the end of the episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Definitely let me know in the comments down below what you think of those 5 wide receivers. Have you watched them? What do you think about them? And super excited just what they could all add to the Chicago Bears offense potentially. Like and subscribe if you liked the video. Check out Instagram and Twitter if you want to as well. And as always, guys, bear down.